Hey everybody, welcome to Kindred Spirits. I'm your host, Christy Brower, and I would like to welcome you to Kindred Spirits on Fridays. This is my very first show on Friday. I have been hosting Kindred Spirits on Mondays for 5 years. So I have to tell you that I feel a little bit upside down and backwards right now. It seems really strange to be here on Friday, but I'm really excited about it too. I needed a change and I needed a little shift in my schedule, and this just feels really good. So I'm hoping that many of you are finding me here. I have made an effort to let you all know I was going to be here on Friday, and I see some of you coming into the chat room, so thank you for being here and for recognizing that change. I'm just excited to embark on something kind of different. It's weird how just the day of your show changes the show a little bit in one way or another, because it changes my energy a little bit and it changes your energy as well. I will not be on video today. I normally do video in the Facebook chat and on YouTube. I am my own producer today, and I decided that maybe that was just a little too much multitasking, although some people might joke that I have never felt there was too much multitasking, but today there definitely is. So I'm just live on 12radio.com player today. And I will be taking your questions and comments and reading requests in the chat in the second half of the show. So you can post those there now if you would like. Just go to 12radio.com and click on chat. That takes you right into our Facebook group where most of you are already members. But if you're not, simply ask to join. And as I am my own producer today, I will let you right in the door. I have an important topic today. And it's one that has been coming up a lot lately, but it's one that I want to talk about from my perspective as a mental health professional and a psychic and a healer. Today I want to talk about suicide. And the first thing that I want to say about suicide is that it's okay to talk about suicide. Growing up, I remember people whispering the word suicide and not being afraid to talk about, or being afraid to talk about it. There was this weird idea that if you said suicide to someone, then maybe they would just do it, which is ridiculous. And the bottom line is we don't talk about suicide nearly enough. We need to make it a regular part of our conversation with everyone in our lives, because it is a potential for anybody to get to that place in your life. And the more that we talk about it, the more we make it normal to say how you feel and to express feelings, even if they are feelings of self-harm, the easier it is for people to seek out help. The less isolated someone will feel with these feelings and emotions if we can be brave and just talk about it. So, a few years ago, a friend of mine completed suicide. Not the first person I've known to complete suicide, and certainly probably not the last, unfortunately, because of the work that I do. But she was one of the kindest people that I've ever known. Everyone in her life, people that knew her, all said what a wonderful human she was. She was simply a bright light. She was a very small person. She was very fairy-like in her physical appearance and in her energy. She was always doing something nice for somebody else, always caring for other people, always aware of other people's needs and emotions, and always there for somebody when they needed it. That was just her. But she also battled alcoholism and battled a long history of abuse. And the alcoholism really became her demon, and it is what ultimately took her life. She tried for all of her adult life to quit. She went to rehab, she went to many treatment programs, and she would have periods of her life where she was doing really, really well and just really on top and going to be okay and moving through this and, going to stay clean. And every time something would happen that would knock her back down into that dark place. It was almost like there was something that was pulling her there, and she was constantly repelling it every day of her life to stay out of that place of feeling like she should harm herself. There was this deep belief inside of her that she did not matter, that she was bad, and that no matter what she did, she would never be good enough. Hard to imagine about a person who, on the outside, was described as being such a loving, wonderful, kind human whom other people loved dearly. But she didn't love herself, in spite of all of that. And I know a lot about her and her history, and I know where that came from as far as her life experiences were concerned. But she had a really hard time overcoming the things that she had been through in the past, even with all of the support around her that she had, which was a lot. I learned a lot from knowing her, and it has helped me to better understand suicide. I realize now that it's not just a choice that someone makes in a selfish moment, but it is the ultimate culmination of such extreme pain that it becomes the only option. So I've been thinking a lot about this because, there have been some very public suicides, some celebrities, and I'm always a little hesitant about talking about those particularly because somehow there is an implication in that it's only famous people who are completing suicide. And now that is entirely not true at all. And it really discounts veterans, LGBTQ teens, elderly, homeless, chronically mentally ill. The list is huge and very broad. I live in a state where suicide is a huge problem and has been for a very long time. Idaho is high on the list when it comes to suicide. It is a well-known issue for us. It is not so easily solved, unfortunately. We know the issue exists, although I live in a place where it is often hidden. I grew up in a town that would frequently take the incident of a suicide and turn it into a car accident or a cleaning your gun and it accidentally went off kind of thing. Even though if you knew the person or you knew the situation, you were pretty sure that this was not accidental. But the sweeping it under the rug and pretending like it wasn't real and wasn't happening has been something that's been happening in my community for a very long time. It's getting better slowly, but it's part of that talking about it. It's part of removing the stigma. That really is what it is, isn't it? There is a stigma around suicide that we have to work on. One, there is a stigma for the person who completes suicide, that they are going to hell, and I say that in air quotes. That is a religious belief. I will tell you, as a psychic and a healer and a medium, that's not true. That isn't true at all. I have worked with the souls of people who have crossed over in that way many, many times. And I will tell you that there is no hell for people who commit suicide, just like there's no hell for anything else, really. But we've put something on ourselves that is very painful, I think, in creating the stigma around for the person who completed suicide or the person who attempted. That's also a group of people who are marginalized and not listened to. And also for the family members of someone who has completed a suicide. People don't want to tell anybody else. Somehow that means we failed in some way, which I have to say is not true at all. I have been in the lives of people who have completed suicide multiple times in my career. I can't avoid it considering what I do for a living. And I will tell you that in every single one of those instances, there was a large group of people who loved that person and who was trying their very best to help them. So can we solve it all? No, we can't. If someone really is convinced that this is what they're going to do, they probably will. Can we stop them? Maybe, maybe not. That's not really the point. The point is that there are things that we can do every day in our everyday lives that help us address this in a more general and broad way. The first, of course, is that we talk about it, that we recognize that it's something that can be a desperate act. It can be something that happens very suddenly. In talking with people who have attempted suicide that I've known throughout my career, many of them will say, this is not something I planned. This is something I did on the spur of the moment because I was feeling very upset. I've seen that with attempted overdoses multiple times, where someone was very, very upset. They just had the end of what they were going to take and took a bottle of pills. And then, these are folks who then asked for help, called 911, went to the hospital, did something where they, had medical intervention. But many of them have told me that this is something that happens kind of in a spur of the moment when someone reaches the end of their rope. That has meaning for me, in that I think it's really important that we realize how much we need to be good stewards of our own emotional health. If someone can just pop off like that, which I have known of many, and it's not all suicides by any means, but it is a common occurrence that I've heard from many people, that in a moment of just extreme stress, that's the solution. Okay, so we have to think about that for ourselves. How are we managing our own emotional health? How are we, burning off steam and burning off stress regularly to make sure that we don't get to a place like that? Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever just been so tired and so frustrated and so worn out that one more thing may not be what you can take? I think we've probably all been there at one time or another in our lives. So recognizing that that's important for our own selves, that we have to do that work, that we have to, whether it's regular meditation or it's energy work or it's prayer or it's going to church or it's talking to a counselor or a close friend or it's jogging or yoga or painting, whatever it is, that we are giving ourselves an outlet that keeps that emotional stress in a constant state of moving out of ourselves, that we are doing something that's releasing it, because that is one way that we can prevent suicide. If you have ever known someone who died by suicide, you were very shocked. It seemed like a very sudden, spur of the moment kind of thing. Consider this, that sometimes this can happen. And so we have to take good care of ourselves and really pay attention to our own emotional health. The other thing that we have to do is that we have to pay attention to those around us. It's become a common theme to say that we don't know what someone else is going through and that we should always be kind. But it's absolutely 100% true. I feel the need to repeat it. We never know what people are going through. But what we can do is have an impact on them in a kind way. A smile, a hello, being friendly, being understanding, giving people a chance and allowing for mistakes has a huge impact on our world. It is a small thing that each of us can do as an individual, but it can change the world one smile at a time. It's a personal goal of mine to be kind and friendly to every person that I come into contact with when I'm just out in my community. I smile at everyone. I say hello to people. I speak to people. I make a point of acknowledging, catching people's eye, making eye contact and smiling. It is a part of what I feel I can do as a healer to heal other people. Have you ever been having an absolutely terrible day and a stranger does something that is so just small and kind, and it shifts the way that you see your day? I remember working in retail. I worked in retail through high school, and this was one of those experiences where customers could either make it or break it for you. If you had a very grouchy, angry customer who was rude to you, it could really affect your day. For me, it could really affect how I felt about my life and my job and everything. And then the people who were kind and who smiled and were friendly and who said thank you and who said have a good day, and who, if there was a problem, said it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not mad. Accidents happen. Things happen. I worked in a bookstore, and so there were always things going on with customer service related things with the ordering of books, because we did special orders for people very regularly. Well, special orders can be a dicey thing, right? Just like any other retail thing. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a book is late, sometimes it doesn't come at all. Sometimes when it comes, the cover is bent. There's always something. And you knew when the customer came in to pick up their book that you might have to explain something. And it would really make a difference in the way that I felt in my day about how someone would take that. First of all, very rarely was it actually my fault. I was simply the messenger, right? This is kind of like at a restaurant when your food is wrong. It is not your server's fault, but they are the messenger. So you have to think about how to deal with it. It doesn't mean I don't ever send my food back if it's wrong, but it does mean that I do it in a kind way and say, hey, this isn't exactly what I ordered. I know accidents happen. Would you mind if you just fixed it for me? And then I always say thank you and I always smile because it's not that person's fault, is it? And how many things that happen to us in public situations that ultimately are not a big deal? Maybe you had to wait a long time in line. Well, do you think that's the checker's fault? Probably not. Maybe somebody cut in front of you. Also, not the checker's fault. Lots of things can happen to us in public that really are, in most ways, blameless, but they are just things that happen in coming into contact with other people. It's what we do with it that really has an impact on the world. Because, if you're a checker at Walmart, that's not who you are. That's your job. And as you're doing your job, you have a whole life you're living outside of that job. And your customers don't know anything about that life, do they? They don't know if you just came back to work after your dad died. They don't know if you came to work after a doctor's appointment where you found out you have an illness. They don't know if you had a fight with your son before you came to work. They don't know those things, right? They just expect you to be there with a smile on your face. Well, I think it's okay to return the favor. Recognizing when people just need a little kindness, a little humanity, looking somebody in the eye and saying, thank you, I appreciate you, really matters. Those little things help to release that buildup of stress, that thing that can sometimes cause us to blow. That can help us. We can do that for anyone in our lives. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for me too. Sometimes I get mad. We all do. And I have to dial myself back a little bit. But I do make this a daily practice of my own to be kind about everything and to recognize, even if I have to make a complaint, to do it in a kind way, in a constructive way, not in a way that's personally attacking a person, because I don't know what they're going through. I don't know their life. What I do know is they're going through something, because we all are. There's no doubt about that. We are all going through something all the time, aren't we? And we can't just wear it on our sleeves. Maybe we could wear little billboards around our necks that say, I have a migraine today. Please be kind to me. We can't really do it. I think that we just have to treat everyone as though they may have a migraine today, or be having a bad day, or be sad, or grieving, or depressed, or in pain. That's just part of the human condition. So that's the first step that I feel like we can take as individuals, just in the general population, as we are out in the world being kind to people. I try to be kind to people in traffic too. Not easy for me, I will admit, but I try to be kind when people pull out in front of me or make a mistake or, get in the wrong lane to turn or whatever it is that they do. I try to just recognize that they are struggling with their own things today and maybe they're distracted. Ultimately, I didn't get in an accident, so it's okay. I have to remind myself of, is this really that important in the grand scheme of things? Is attacking another person more important than just showing love and letting it go? So that's my challenge to you, to watch yourself in situations like that. And especially in situations that there may be a problem. That's when it's important to be the most kind, to be the most understanding and the most patient with people. I know we can all do it. It becomes something that we have to put into our conscious minds, that we are practicing on a regular basis. So it becomes a consciousness that I'm just kind all the time, no matter what. I went to my favorite coffee hut recently. As I was pulling away, I took a drink of my coffee, and the milk was obviously sour in my latte. You don't disrespect my coffee. I have to have decaf these days because I can't tolerate caffeine anymore, but I still drink it because I love coffee. And I had a moment of being angry and frustrated that this $5 coffee was bad. And then I let it go. And I went back to the window and I, explained. And they were so nice about it and so apologetic. But I was proud of myself that I didn't get angry, that I didn't hurt anyone over it, because in the long run, it's just a cup of coffee, right? Yeah. So it is something that I have to practice all the time, and it's something that I challenge all of you to practice as well. And yeah, we're going to screw up sometimes, but the best thing that we can do is just start over. always practicing an attitude of kindness and understanding. The next thing I think would be very helpful for us when it comes to just general suicide prevention is not being afraid to ask people that we know if they're okay. Have you ever noticed someone in your life starts to behave differently? Their attitude seems different. Their demeanor seems different. They're absent a lot. They're quiet when they're normally talkative. All of those things can be an indication that something's going on inside that needs some attention. So don't be afraid to ask someone if they're okay. Talking about suicide does not perpetuate it, it prevents it. This is an important message because there's such a falsehood in our culture, and we have to stop participating in it. If you notice something, say something. It's always okay to say, "Are you doing okay? You seem kind of down." You don't have to say, "Are you going to commit suicide?" You don't have to say that. But you can just ask someone, "You seem kind of down. Are you okay? Can I help you? What do you need?" That's all you have to say. Some of us aren't very good at saying how we feel, are we? Some of us don't speak up. We just allow things to fester. We need someone to ask. Now, it's also a good idea to check in with people even if you don't notice something different. It is not unheard of for someone to complete suicide and no one knew they were depressed. Some people are just very good at hiding it. That is part of the stigma that we have in our culture, that being depressed is a sign of weakness. It indicates that you aren't strong enough to handle your own life. And depending on what kind of a culture you grew up in, religion, what family, what kind of beliefs you grew up with, you might be very uncomfortable about speaking up at all. And so you may hide it very well. And so periodically, as a responsible person who is recognizing that your impact makes an impact, that your decisions to reach out to people make an impact on the world, you ask, "You doing okay? Everything going okay?" That's all you have to say. You've just made yourself a safe person in that situation. Suddenly someone recognizes it's okay to tell you because you're not going to judge me. So take the time to check in, to care, and to ask. Periodically, everyone in your life, "You doing okay? Do you need anything? You struggling with anything?" It's simply an indication that you care and that you notice. We don't always notice each other all that much, do we? Have you ever realized that someone in your life got a new haircut and you didn't notice it for a few days? Or have you ever had anyone not notice your new haircut for a few days? People who are looking straight at you several times a day, speaking directly to you. We get really wrapped up in ourselves and our own stuff. Something that I learned a long time ago that really helps me to not really take offense at what other people say and do is that we are all very me-centered. That's just the plight of being a human. And so I'm thinking primarily about me and my life. And so in a not very enlightened way, I might consider that means that everyone else is also thinking about me and my life. Not the case. I'm thinking about me and my life, and you're thinking about you and your life. And there's a lot of disconnect between the two. We have to lift our heads up and really look. It has to be intentional because it does become habit to just see something and not really register it in someone else. So it's really important that we take the time to recognize that somebody may have made a big change and we haven't noticed it. Somebody may be really struggling and we've been too focused on ourselves to notice. This is an important practice to get in the habit of because it does need to be a practice. It's a practice in the way that you think, and it's a practice in the way that you communicate. That you regularly ask someone, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Have you ever come across someone in the restroom of a public place who is crying in the bathroom? I have, lots of times. For a long time, I was too scared to ask them if they were okay. I really wanted to, but then I thought maybe I'm prying, that old, I shouldn't meddle in other people's business sort of attitude that keeps us away from supporting other people. And I've really worked on this, that if I see someone crying in the bathroom or somewhere else who's a stranger to me, I make a point of asking them if they're okay and if there's anything I can do for them. I realize they probably won't tell me anything, and there probably isn't anything I can do for them. But in that moment, I made a connection. I cared about them. Maybe I'm the only one who has, and I'm a total stranger. Maybe I'm the only one who noticed. And maybe that's because they're crying in the bathroom at Walmart because they don't want anyone else in their life to know that they're struggling. So they're crying in a public place rather than a place where people know them. So simply just stepping up and saying, "Are you okay? Is there anything that I can do for you?" means the world. Even if you don't do anything, even if that's all you do, it means the world to someone who's struggling. We can do those things. They're not that hard. It's actually pretty simple. It just is a matter of changing perspective, looking outward more rather than inward, and being brave. I think about my mom. My mom was a very brave person. My mom did not tolerate violence of any kind. Many times, I have multiple memories of this as a kid. When I was a kid, it was not uncommon to see a parent spank a child in the grocery store. Now, I'll say these days, I don't think you see that nearly as often. But when I was a child, that was still a pretty common event. My mom, who was all of 5 foot tall, she was a small person, but she was a spitfire when it came to stuff like this. Many times walked directly up to a parent and said, "It is not okay to physically abuse your children. You should not be spanking your child. You shouldn't be hitting them. What is the matter with you?" I also saw her say, "Do you need some help? You seem really stressed. It's not okay to hit your child. Do you need some help?" I saw her do that many times in the store. Two, varying reactions, as I'm sure you can imagine. It was, not always met with appreciation, but she really was not afraid to speak up. She assisted women in domestic violence situations in getting out and getting an attorney and getting help many times. I witnessed that. One time there was a domestic violence incident going on the front lawn of a house across the street from our house. The man was beating his wife on the front lawn. It was early in the morning. And my mom ran across the street in her nightgown and got right in that man's face. Now remember, my mom, same size as me, 5 foot. And this guy was huge. He was about 6'5". He was a great big guy. Was a guy we were always kind of scared of in my neighborhood because he was huge and he was always angry, and you could tell there were some problems there. My mom got right in his face and backed him off, called the police, and took his wife in to sit in our living room until the police came. She wasn't afraid to get involved. I've heard the phrase several times lately, "If you see something, say something." And that can be applied to a lot of different things. But I do think that it applies in this respect very much. That if you see another person struggling, if you see someone being harmed, if you see someone that you can tell is in distress, say something. Even if they don't let you help them, you cared in the moment. You cared. And it matters. It truly does. In my years of interviewing people who were suicidal, I used to do suicide assessments of teenagers. That was part of my job. And that was a very enlightening experience. I learned a lot about kids and suicide and about how much their parents' opinions and attitudes toward them mattered, about how one thing said by an authority figure that they cared about could either fix everything or break everything, about truly how much more sensitive children are to criticism and meanness than we maybe want to recognize. And these are teenagers, not just little kids, but how often they felt that their parents hated them, that they felt that they never did anything right, that no matter what they did, it was wrong, that there was not an underlying energy of love in their life. And this is something that I think that we all can work on. Everybody has their challenges with each other in their personal relationships, but do we have an underlying energy of love in every relationship. That no matter how frustrated you might be with someone, do they always know you love them? Or is it a question? Or is it a question? If you're mad enough or frustrated enough with someone, do they question whether you love them? You always have to love them first. We always have to love everybody first, no matter what. Behaviors are just behaviors. But loving people for their existence is what matters. This is something I've been teaching for a long time. As humans, we matter because we exist. That's it. No qualifiers. We don't matter because of what we do or say or who we are or what we have or what we believe. We matter because we exist. That's why there's no difference in the quality or the value of a person depending on where they came from, what color their skin is, what they believe, how much money they have, what they can do. Those things do not give us value. Existing as a human being, existing as a living thing gives us value. I think that's a key that we're still missing in Western culture. This idea that we matter simply because we exist is not there. We matter because of what we do, usually. We matter because of our job. Do we do something important? Do we make a lot of money? Do we believe the right things? Do we follow along with what our local society says we should follow along with? Have we done the expected things? Are we living our lives the way everyone else thinks we should? None of those things have anything to do with value, or with my least favorite word in the English language, worthiness. Growing up a Mormon, that word worthiness was thrown around all the time. There were lots of things that you could do or not do that would affect your worthiness. And to me, that always meant your value as a human being. Just wrong and sick, and it hurts people. That hurts people. So adopting an attitude that everyone matters the same because they exist. Everyone has the same value because they exist is suicide prevention. Like my friend, I'm going to call her Alice, like Alice, who no matter what she did, no matter how many beautiful things that she did for other people, no matter how much support that she offered other people, she wasn't good enough. She couldn't do enough to be worthy. I believe that was the underlying belief that took her life. So it is something that we can do, is treating everyone with that level of love and that level of value. You matter because you exist. You don't have to prove or do or be or believe anything to matter. That's suicide prevention right there. Yeah. Elizabeth says, yes, people are afraid to get involved today. If you are there, you can make a difference. So important. Yeah, I think it's not just today. I think that's always been a thing, that people are afraid to get involved in. It's not my problem. That's their issue. I'm not going to deal with that. I don't have time for that. I don't have energy for that. Or I shouldn't meddle in other people's business. We kind of have those old adages that come up that are really important for us to look at when it comes to, getting involved. I mean, if you're the person who happens to be there in the moment, then you're the person who's involved, right? You can't just walk away. Now, having said all of that, sometimes no matter how we try, suicide wins out. This is not ever something that you should blame yourself for. If you know someone who completed suicide and you were trying to help them, you were making a difference. The ultimate choice is theirs. We can give love and kindness and awareness as much as possible, but that is all we can do. Sometimes suicide wins out. I think one of the things that we have to work on regarding this is it sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was reading the chat room and got distracted. Something that we have to work on in relation to this, first of all, is that if someone completes suicide, they've died, they've passed on, they've gone to the same place everyone does, right? There's no punishment. There's no going to hell. There's no, bad things happening to that soul after they go. That is not true in any way. And they have passed on and moved on to the next phase of their development, just like we all do. Whether you die of a heart attack or you die by suicide, you go to the same place. The same things happen. Now, I will say, in my work, I have worked many times with the souls of those who have died by suicide, who don't cross all the way over. And I know that these are just human words that we give to describe what happens in the energy realm, because we don't really have good words for it. But it's like someone gets stuck and they have one foot stuck in the mud and they can't take another step forward. That's what it feels like. That comes from belief. It comes from fear that they're going to go to a bad place, that they're going to be punished. And so sometimes they get stuck. It is a part of the work that I have been doing for all of my adult life, helping people who have been stuck like that to move on. That's why I have a lot to say about this. I've been around suicide in a lot of different ways. I have had friends and clients who have passed by suicide. I have worked with lots of people who were feeling suicidal and sort of getting a feel for where that's coming from. I've seen it from a lot of different directions, and so that's why, and worked with people who have attempted suicide multiple times. So that's why I feel like I really want to talk about this, because I have a lot of experience with it. I wanted to say, Mark says, brilliant stuff, Christy. I noticed that I stopped offering help because I was shamed once for doing it. Yeah. A young person in a wheelchair told me to offer help to someone who needs it. So it was getting over my own fear of shame, not my not caring. Yes, exactly. I think it's never about not caring. I do think it is about you don't know what the response is going to be. And yes, sometimes people shame you. Sometimes people are rude. Sometimes people tell you to go to hell and mind your own business. That's been said to me before. I have to get my own feelings out of it and recognize that this isn't about me. And they're in a difficult and painful place. And even though they didn't accept my help, in the long run, somebody stopped and noticed and cared. And that matters. That matters. That matters very much. When I was working with kids, I would do suicide assessments. I worked for a group foster home, and we took emergency placement kids who could stay in our facility for 36 hours. So they would no, not 36 hours. It was a 3-day placement. So they would come to us for 3 days. And in that time, we would assess them, potentially send them to a hospital if that's where they needed to go, or connect them up with other services, talk with parents. I did a lot of calling the police and child protection and, all kinds of things, because I would have kids tell me all kinds of things that other adults in their lives did not know. And some of the things that they told me were, first of all, they didn't want to tell anyone because they were afraid they would get into trouble. So kind of that whole idea, Mark, about being shamed, being discounted, being punished for saying how they felt, And I've seen that. I've seen that with parents who say, you don't really feel that way. You need to stop talking like that. You're just trying to shock people. So we have to be careful about how we talk to people. We also have to recognize that some people feel very invisible in this world. And a lot of teenagers that I worked with felt very invisible. Their parents were busy with their own lives and with the younger kids. And, they expected the teenagers to be more self-sufficient. And so they started sort of separating themselves from them. The parents started separating them from their children to a point that kids didn't feel supported anymore. Or it was parents who had a lot of their own issues, who were so busy with their own problems that they weren't really noticing their kids anymore. We have to really work on that idea of invisibility. Invisibility breeds suicide. When we don't feel like we matter, like our existence has any impact on anyone in the world, or that we feel like our existence has a negative impact. Many people that I have talked with who have attempted suicide have said, I felt like my family would be better off without me. That's where the mindset is. So we have to really work at expressing someone's value, expressing the importance that they have in our own lives, acknowledging that their existence is important and is positive for us. Those things really matter. People need to hear those things, and they don't need to just hear them once. They need to hear them all the time. We all need to hear those things all the time. Oriana says, when I was 13, I thought about suicide because I was so unhappy. I was bullied terribly in school and felt I didn't belong. My mom had asked me if something was wrong. I told her. I went into therapy, got out of that school, and it totally changed my life for the better. That's wonderful, Oriana. You spoke up, and your mom heard you. It seems like such simple things, but it is stuff that we miss. Sometimes because we've been shamed and we don't dare speak up. Sometimes because we're distracted by our own stuff. Donna says, I can tell you not taking the time to talk to someone who needed it can make your life feel pretty darn bad if the outcome is suicide. I will never not take the time again. I was young and foolish. Yes. It's a good point, Donna, but I think it's also really important that you not blame yourself. Ultimately, suicide is a choice, and it is a choice made by one individual. Sometimes we can help and sometimes we can't. And in that moment, I'm sure, Donna, that you like to believe that if you had, it would have stopped it. And maybe it would, and maybe it wouldn't. We don't know. All we can do is our best, to be our best people and to show love to everyone that we come into contact with. That's what matters. Linda says, I have been on both sides of it, unfortunately. I have helped many and lost some. It won't stop me from caring and trying. Yes. Very key, Linda. No matter what, we can't stop caring, we can't stop trying. I feel the same way. There are times when, something like that happens in your life that you wonder, is there even a point in trying to help? But there is. There definitely is. There definitely is. Suicide is devastating and painful to the people who are left behind. We know that. Just like any loss is, only worse because we tend to personalize things. And so sometimes when this happens, we feel like the person chose to leave us. We have to remember that this isn't about us. It was about them. And they weren't choosing to leave anyone. They were choosing for themselves to leave. That comes up many times with family members, and I think we have to just remember where someone's at in their mindset. They're not thinking about, getting back at someone. People don't complete suicide out of revenge. They do it out of pain and desperation. Let's see. Elizabeth says, I was just about to say this is excellent. I would rather help save a life than worry about being shamed, but I have a stronger self-esteem now. Donna says, yes, that is what I do believe, Christy. I felt very bad for a long time. Okay. Donna, I just want to support you in this, only just to give you the other side of the coin, that you weren't the only person in the situation, for one, and for another, ultimately the choice that was made by that person. And I know that it hurts, and I don't mean to discount you at all. I just want you to recognize that we don't have control over other people. As much as we might want to, we don't always. And that's hard. That's a hard part of dealing with this issue, is that, we hope that if we talk to people, if we provide support, if we're kind all the time and loving, that no one will complete suicide. And the reality is that's not true. It will still happen. But we can reduce it. We can slow it down. We have a huge problem with teen suicide in my area, and it's teens in the LGBT community, because I live in a very conservative place with people with very archaic ideas about being LGBT and about, what sexuality and gender identity should be versus allowing people to self-identify and just be who they are, treating people like if they're different than them, then it's wrong or bad, or they're going to hell, or they're choosing evil, or they're letting Satan in, or, there's all this crazy religious stuff that happens. And so it's a part of my work in my own community that my wife and I, Rhonda, we run PFLAG, which is a support organization for the LGBT community and their allies, and are always doing what we can to reach out into the community to try and, provide support and that sense of love and that sense of value in people when they aren't getting it at home, they aren't getting it at school, they aren't getting it in their church. They need to get it from somewhere. People need to feel validated and seen. That really matters. One of my favorite movies is Avatar. The Avatar with the blue people. I know there's more than one Avatar, but the thing that they say to each other in greeting, which is "I see you." I've been using that ever since I saw that movie the first time. I've started saying that to people because it means that I acknowledge you. I recognize you for who you are. I see what you're struggling with. I'm aware. That matters, to say I see you. It's such a small thing. But when people, or I hear you, I see you, I hear you, I understand you, are all little things that we can say that can help diffuse stress, that can help bring a sense of someone cares about me, someone recognizes my challenge. Definitely another step that we came home. Let's see. Oh, Annika says, twice I came home having survived large pulmonary saddle embolisms. My sister's only relative reaction was, now I don't get paid for the days you were in the hospital. Do I feel loved? No. Right now, you are talking about a person who does not want to exist anymore. No matter how much love I have put out all my life, it is not always returned. It's true, Annika. It is not always returned. And I think that we have to get beyond the idea that we do it for a return. And I'm not saying that you do. Love isn't always returned, but we give it because of who we are, not because of who someone else is. It really matters that we give it because that's who we are. And maybe it will be accepted and maybe it won't. I worked in domestic violence and sexual assault for 3 years. I used to go on scene to domestic violence incidents and sexual assaults with the police. And my job, I was a victim advocate, so it was my job to work with the victims in this situation. And often I worked in suicide as well, worked with family members of someone who had completed suicide, who were traumatized and needing some assistance. And not everybody wants the help. Not everybody's nice about it. Not everybody, some people say, get the hell out of my house. Don't you dare talk to me ever again. This is none of your business. I've heard all of those things and worse. But I know that we just have to keep trying. We just have to keep trying because there are many people who accept it and hear it when they need help like that. And even the ones who don't, at least they know someone showed up for them. Even if it's something they didn't want, at least they know that someone showed up. It matters. Right, Annika? It matters. And for you, because that's who you are, you will continue to give love, even if it doesn't always come back to you, because that's who you are. But my hope is that you have other people in your life that are giving you love. We all need that. And so if you don't, it's time to reach out further. And of course, you can reach out to us here, Annika, if you need more support, because we're right here. Linda says, if I am completely transparent, I can say, sorry, Facebook got in my way here. I can say I was, oh my goodness, sorry, guys. Facebook just doesn't want to cooperate with me today. I'm having a little trouble. Hang on, I'm going to get right back to it. I wanted to get to Linda's comment. It's jumped around on me, and so I missed it. Hang on, scrolling. It's taking forever. Apologies about that. Okay. Linda says, if I'm completely transparent, I can say I was also the young person on the suicide attempt end of things as well many, many years ago. Long story. I now know I had the experience to understand the side of it to help people. Awesome, Linda. I think that people who have been through trauma are the very best people to help people in trauma, right? Because we know what it feels like. We have been there. We can take this energy and turn it into something positive, right? We can offer support to those who we recognize, right? Once you've been through something yourself, you see it in other people, don't you? It's easier to recognize it and go, I know that this is I know what this is because I've seen it before. I'm curious, Linda, if anyone spoke to you on this subject at the time and how that helped you. I'm always curious to hear from people who've had an attempt. What helped them? You know, what helped them? What did someone say that assisted them in that moment? I think it helps us to know. I know that I'm coming down to the end of the show. I'm sorry I said I was going to do readings today, but I guess I had more to say than I thought. I love that you were all here with me. I hoped I wasn't going to lose anyone coming over to a different day, and I can see that you're all here, and I really appreciate that very much. I know that I'm preaching to the choir here. I know that you are a group of very loving people who reach out to others in every way that you can. But I think it's always something for us to talk about and remember and look at what other ways we can be more supportive, be more aware. I think that the awareness of strangers really, really matters. Smiling at people, saying hello, saying thank you, saying I appreciate you. Those things really matter because you don't know if anyone else has said something positive to that person today. And maybe they're really struggling, and maybe they're not sure what's going to happen when they go home from work. And knowing that somebody cared does have an impact. So we can all do that. That's a part of what we, as human beings on this planet, have the ability to do. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all of the experiences that I have had, like Linda. I feel like they have helped me to be more supportive of other people, to recognize pain in other people because I've experienced it myself. And so kind of look at yourself and your own experiences. What have you been through? And how could you use that to assist somebody else? Let's see here. I'm going to just check the chat room just a couple more times. I'm loving this time on Fridays. I do want to tell you that coming up after me is Strange Phenomena and Mysteries. They are live today, and I think they're talking about aliens. I'm just going to say that's what it looked like to me. It's going to be a really fun show. So you want to stay tuned for that. And, be here with us at 1-2 Radio. But please take this week to become aware of your interactions with all people. In every situation, before you respond, ask yourself, is this kind? Is this kind? Is this necessary? Is it necessary? Does it matter if I express my, discomfort at something that no one can change? Is it really my fault that, is it someone else's fault if what I was late? I've had that one before too. Or if I asked the wrong question, or if my food was wrong because of an accident in the kitchen, is that a reason to be mean to somebody? It isn't. So I think that we just practice every day being kind, only doing what is necessary, and doing it in a way that validates people as people. Never forget, we have value because we exist as humans. Nothing else gives us value as human beings. No matter what we do with our lives, we all have value because of who we are and because we exist as living beings. If you adopt that belief, I feel like you will impact the entire world. You will change the world with that understanding. If all you have to do is recognize that we all matter, we all have value because we exist. Thank you all so much for being here with me today, for participating in the chat, for listening. If you're listening to an archive or a replay, thank you for being here. You can always find me at 12listen.com. If you need help in this particular arena or any other, I am here for you. I will be at one2listen.com later on this afternoon, and I'm always there if you need to make a schedule call or a callback request. I'm always available there, and I have several email readings that are very helpful that can be more immediate as well. So please take advantage of that, and please stay tuned for Strange Phenomena and Mysteries. And as always, thanks for listening to 1-2 Radio, where we're changing the way you listen to the world.